Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship New Frontier, watching the blue and green world of Kepler 442b grow larger on the main screen. After 18 months of travel through deep space, they had finally reached their new home. Behind him, 50,000 human colonists slept in cryopods, dreaming of the life they would build on this alien world. Jake had been chosen to lead this mission because of his calm nature and diplomatic skills. Earth needed someone who could work with the Zephyrians, the silicon-based aliens who ruled this planet. The Galactic Council had promised that these beings would welcome human settlers and help them build a new society. Dr. Lisa Campbell walked onto the bridge, carrying a datapad filled with information about their hosts. She had spent years studying the Zephyrians and learning their complex language. Her job was to make sure humans and aliens could understand each other and work together. "The Zephyrians are sending us landing coordinates," she told Jake. "They want us to build our first settlement in the Northern Valley. They call it the Place of New Beginnings." Jake smiled at the name. It seemed like a good sign. Earth was running out of space and resources. Wars had been fought over clean water and fertile land. When the Galactic Council offered humanity a chance to spread across the stars, millions had volunteered to leave their home planet forever. The New Frontier landed smoothly on a wide plain covered with strange purple grass. The air was breathable, though it smelled different from Earth's atmosphere. Jake was the first to step outside, followed by Dr. Campbell and Commander Ryan Parker, the man responsible for building their new city. 3 Zephyrians waited for them near the landing site. They looked like walking crystal formations, their bodies made of living silicon that caught and reflected the light of Kepler 442b's twin suns. The tallest one stepped forward and spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am Crystal Singer Valen, chosen by our council to guide your settlement. We are pleased to share our world with your kind." Dr. Campbell activated her translation device and responded carefully in the Zephyrian language. She had practiced this moment many times during the long journey. "We thank you for this gift, Crystal Singer Valen. We come in peace and friendship, hoping to learn from your wisdom." The ceremony was brief but warm. The Zephyrians showed them the boundaries of their new territory and explained the planet's seasons and weather patterns. They warned about dangerous animals and pointed out sources of fresh water. Everything seemed perfect. Commander Ryan Parker wasted no time beginning construction. Within days, human workers had cleared the landing site and begun building temporary shelters. The colonists worked from sunrise to sunset, driven by excitement about their new home. They had brought advanced construction equipment from Earth, and their buildings rose quickly from the purple soil. Dr. Campbell spent her time learning about Zephyrian culture and sharing human knowledge in return. She discovered that the Zephyrians were an ancient people who moved very slowly and carefully. They thought about decisions for months or even years before acting. Their cities had taken centuries to build, and they changed very little over time. The humans fascinated their hosts. Where Zephyrians saw problems, humans found solutions. When strange storms damaged the first buildings, Ryan Parker's team redesigned them to be stronger. When local animals ate their earth crops, the colonists quickly learned to grow native plants instead. Within 3 months, the human settlement had grown from a collection of temporary shelters into a proper town. They named it New Haven, and it already housed 5,000 people. The colonists had built a school, a hospital, workshops, and farms. They had even started a small factory that produced tools and equipment from local materials. The Zephyrians watched this rapid progress with growing amazement. Crystal Singer Valen visited New Haven every few weeks, walking through the streets with Dr. Campbell and asking questions about human methods. He seemed both impressed and puzzled by what he saw. "Your people work very quickly," he told Dr. Campbell during one of his visits. "In the time it takes us to plan a single building, you have constructed an entire neighborhood. How do you make decisions so fast?" Dr. Campbell explained that humans were used to solving problems under pressure. On Earth, we had to be quick and creative to survive. We learned to try new things and change our plans when they didn't work. The Zephyrian leader nodded slowly, but his crystal body seemed to dim slightly. Dr. Campbell noticed this change but wasn't sure what it meant. Meanwhile, Commander Ryan Parker was expanding New Haven beyond anyone's expectations. His construction teams had learned to work with local materials in ways that surprised even the experienced engineers. They discovered that the purple grass could be woven into strong building materials. Local stones could be melted and reformed into perfect construction blocks. The human settlement began to look like a city from Earth, but built with alien materials that made it stronger and more beautiful than anything back home. Gardens bloomed with both earth flowers and native plants. Children played in parks while their parents worked in clean, efficient factories. Other human ships arrived every few months, bringing more colonists and supplies from Earth. Each new group was amazed by what New Haven had become. Word spread across the galaxy that the human colony was not just surviving, but thriving beyond all expectations. Jake Morrison felt proud of what his people had accomplished, but he also noticed subtle changes in how the Zephyrians treated them. Crystal Singer Valen's visits became less frequent. When he did come, he spent more time asking questions about human technology and less time offering friendly conversation. Dr. Campbell tried to maintain good relations with their hosts. She organized cultural exchange programs and invited Zephyrian scholars to study human methods, but she began to sense tension beneath the polite words and formal ceremonies. The first real sign of trouble came during the harvest season. The humans had developed new farming techniques that produced 3 times more food than traditional Zephyrian methods. When they offered to share these techniques with nearby Zephyrian communities, they received a cold response. "We appreciate your generous offer," Crystal Singer Valen told Dr. Campbell, "but we must preserve our traditional ways. Change comes slowly to our people, and too much change can be dangerous." Ryan Parker didn't understand the rejection. "We're trying to help them," he told Jake. "Our methods could feed their entire population better than ever before. Why won't they at least try?" Jake wasn't sure, but he suspected the Zephyrians were becoming uncomfortable with human success. New Haven had grown larger and more prosperous than any Zephyrian city of similar age. The humans had solved engineering problems that had puzzled their hosts for generations. As winter approached on Kepler 442b, the first official restrictions appeared. The Zephyrian Council announced new rules about human expansion. No new settlements could be built without lengthy approval processes. Human technology could not be shared with other alien species without special permits. Trade between humans and Zephyrians would be limited to approved goods only. Dr. Campbell attended the council meeting where these rules were announced. She listened carefully as the Zephyrian leaders explained their reasoning. They spoke about protecting the planet's environment and preserving cultural traditions. But beneath their formal language, she heard something else: fear. The Zephyrians were afraid of being left behind by the humans they had welcomed as guests. They had expected the colonists to need their help and guidance for many years. Instead, the humans had become competitors, showing skills and creativity that made their hosts look slow and outdated. Jake Morrison called a meeting with his senior staff that evening. They gathered in his office at the center of New Haven, looking out at the lights of their thriving city. The mood was serious as they discussed what the new restrictions might mean. "They're trying to slow us down," Ryan Parker said bluntly. "They don't want us to succeed too much or too quickly." Dr. Campbell nodded sadly. "I think Ryan is right. We've made them feel threatened without meaning to. Our success makes their traditional ways look inefficient." Jake stared out at the city his people had built in less than a year. It was beautiful and prosperous, everything they had dreamed of when they left Earth. But now he wondered if their very success might destroy the peaceful future they had hoped to create. News of the human colony's success on Kepler 442b spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Despite the growing tensions with the Zephyrians, reports reached Earth about New Haven's remarkable achievements. The story inspired hope on the overcrowded home planet and caught the attention of other alien civilizations looking for new opportunities. Colonel Amy Rodriguez received her orders 3 months after the first. Restrictions were placed on the Kepler colony. She would lead the second wave of human expansion, this time to Proxima Centauri C, home of the aquatic nautiloids. Unlike the crystal beings of Kepler 442b, the nautiloids lived entirely underwater in vast cities built from cultivated coral and shaped metal. Amy had spent her entire career in Earth's naval forces, making her the perfect choice to lead an underwater colony. She brought with her 25,000 colonists, most of them experienced divers, marine engineers, and underwater construction specialists. Their destination was an ocean world where the land masses were small islands scattered across endless blue seas. Dr. Kevin Hughes joined Amy's mission as the chief marine biologist. He had studied the nautiloids for years through long-distance communications and was excited to work directly with the intelligent sea creatures. The nautiloids had 8 flexible arms, large eyes adapted for deep water, and skin that could change color to communicate complex emotions and ideas. When the human ships arrived at Proxima Centauri C, they were greeted by Ambassador Coral Swimmer, a nautiloid whose skin flashed patterns of welcome in bright blues and greens. The meeting took place on a floating platform that the nautiloids had built specially for air-breathing visitors. "We have heard amazing stories about human abilities," Coral Swimmer said through a water-filled speaker system. "Your people turned barren land into a thriving city in less than one of our years. We hope you can bring similar success to our ocean world." Amy Rodriguez smiled as she watched the nautiloid's skin shift through different shades of excitement. "We're honored by your invitation, Ambassador. Our people have always been drawn to the sea. We hope to learn from your wisdom while sharing our own knowledge." The nautiloids had prepared an underwater section of their capital city for the human colonists. Using advanced diving suits and underwater habitats, the humans began establishing their new home 50 meters below the surface. The technology allowed them to live and work underwater while still breathing air and maintaining connection to the surface world. Dr. Kevin Hughes immediately began studying nautiloid farming methods. The sea creatures grew various types of seaweed and kelp in carefully tended underwater forests. They also raised schools of fish in controlled areas, harvesting them sustainably over long periods. The system worked well, but produced limited amounts of food relative to the size of the nautiloid population. Within weeks, Kevin had identified ways to improve the underwater farms dramatically. By introducing new growing techniques from Earth and combining them with local sea plants, he created hybrid crops that grew 3 times faster than traditional nautiloid varieties. The new farms could feed many more people while using the same amount of ocean space. The nautiloids were amazed by these innovations. Schools of them would gather to watch human farmers work, their skin flashing patterns of curiosity and admiration. Ambassador Coral Swimmer visited the human settlement almost daily, asking questions and requesting demonstrations of new techniques. Meanwhile, on the distant world of Tau Ceti, Captain Ben Turner was establishing humanity's 3rd major colony among the Quartzlings. These aliens were living crystal beings, similar to the Zephyrians but smaller and more colorful. They lived in vast underground cities carved from natural crystal formations that had grown over millions of years. Maria Santos, the chief mining engineer, quickly discovered that human techniques could extract valuable minerals from the crystal caves without damaging the beautiful formations. Traditional quartzling methods were slow and careful, taking years to harvest small amounts of precious stones. Maria's team could accomplish the same, work in weeks while actually improving the structural integrity of the crystal forests. The quartzlings celebrated these advances with ceremonies, where their crystal bodies rang like musical instruments. Chief Resonator Harmony Song told Captain Ben Turner that humans were blessed with the gift of swift creation. The crystal beings began requesting human help with projects that had been stalled for decades. Back on Proxima Centauri C, the human underwater colony was growing rapidly. Amy Rodriguez oversaw the construction of New Depths, a sprawling underwater city that combined human engineering with nautiloid architectural principles. The buildings were streamlined for underwater currents but included air-filled spaces where humans could live comfortably. Dr. Kevin Hughes made his most important discovery during the colony's 4th month. While experimenting with hybrid sea plants, he created a new type of kelp that could grow in previously unusable parts of the ocean. These desert areas of the seafloor had been considered barren by the nautiloids, but Kevin's new kelp thrived in the harsh conditions. "This could change everything," Kevin explained to Amy Rodriguez as they toured the experimental farm. "There are vast areas of ocean that the nautiloids considered worthless. With these new crops, we could increase food production for the entire planet by 10 times. The news excited the nautiloid leadership initially. Ambassador Coral Swimmer's skin flashed brilliant patterns of joy as he toured the experimental farms. He immediately brought other nautiloid leaders to see the remarkable new crops and requested detailed plans for expanding the system across their world. But as weeks passed, Amy began to notice subtle changes in how the nautiloids interacted with the human colonists. The daily visits from Ambassador Coral Swimmer became less frequent. When Nautiloid officials did visit New Depths, their skin color seemed more muted, showing less enthusiasm than before. Dr. Helen Brooks, Earth's Secretary of Colonial Affairs, had been monitoring reports from all 3 human colonies. From her office on Earth, she coordinated communications between the distant settlements and tracked their progress. The news had been consistently positive for months, but recently she had begun receiving concerning messages. The reports from Kepler 442b described increasing restrictions on human activities. The Zephyrians had created new bureaucratic processes that slowed down every human project. Building permits that once took days to approve now required months of review. Trade agreements were being revised to limit what humans could buy and sell. From Tau Ceti E, Captain Ben Turner reported similar problems. The Quartzlings had begun expressing concern about human mining techniques, claiming they were too aggressive despite their obvious success. Some Quartzling factions were calling for limits on human expansion into new crystal caves. Dr. Helen Brooks scheduled emergency video conferences with all 3 colony leaders. Jake Morrison from Kepler 442b looked tired and frustrated as he described the latest restrictions imposed by the Zephyrians. "They're making it almost impossible for us to expand," he said. "Every new project faces endless delays and reviews." Amy Rodriguez reported from her underwater office in New Depths. "The Nautiloids were excited about our farming innovations at first, but now they're questioning everything. Yesterday, Ambassador Coral Swimmer told me they need to study the environmental impact of our new kelp varieties." Ben Turner joined the call from the crystal caves of Tau Ceti A. "The Quartzlings are talking about preserving traditional harmony," he said with obvious frustration. "They want us to stop using our efficient mining methods and go back to their old techniques that take 10 times longer." Dr. Helen Brooks recognized the pattern emerging across all 3 colonies. The initial welcome and cooperation was giving way to suspicion and resistance. The alien civilizations that had invited human colonists were becoming uncomfortable with human success and innovation. "They're afraid of us," Dr. Helen Brooks concluded during a private conversation with Earth's Leadership Council. "Not afraid that we'll attack them or take over their worlds by force. They're afraid that we'll make them look incompetent by comparison." The situation worsened rapidly over the following months. On Proxima Centauri C, the Nautiloids implemented depth restrictions that prevented humans from accessing the most productive ocean territories. They claimed the restrictions were necessary to protect sensitive marine ecosystems, but the areas they declared off-limits were exactly where Dr. Kevin Hughes had achieved his greatest successes. The Quartzlings on Tau Ceti E began requiring harmony assessments for all human mining operations. These assessments took months to complete and usually resulted in recommendations to slow down or stop human activities. Maria Santos found herself spending more time filling out paperwork than actually working with crystals. On Kepler 442b, the Zephyrians announced that human colonists would need to relocate to less desirable parts of the planet. They claimed the fertile valleys where New Haven had been built were needed for traditional Zephyrian cultural preservation. The proposed relocation sites were harsh, rocky areas far from water sources and mineral deposits. Amy Rodriguez called another emergency conference with her fellow colony leaders. This time the mood was much darker than before. The situation on Kepler 442b reached a breaking point 6 months after the depth restrictions began affecting other human colonies. Jake Morrison stood in his office overlooking New Haven, watching Zephyrian security forces erect barriers around the city's outer districts. The crystal beings had declared the human settlement an ecological hazard zone and were forcing all colonists to relocate to the Bitter Wastes, a desert region on the planet's smallest continent. Dr. Lisa Campbell rushed into Jake's office carrying a data pad with the official evacuation notice. Her face was pale as she read the Zephyrian Council's final decree. "They're calling us an invasive species. Jake, they say human presence is disrupting the planet's natural balance and threatening their ancestral crystal formations." The evacuation order gave the 50,000 human colonists exactly 90 days to abandon New Haven and move to the designated relocation zone. The Bitter Wastes were barely habitable, with extreme temperatures, frequent sandstorms, and no natural water sources. It was essentially a death sentence disguised as a relocation program. Commander Ryan Parker had spent the morning surveying the proposed relocation site. He returned to New Haven with grim news. "The area they've assigned us is completely barren," he reported to the emergency council meeting. "No minerals, no fertile soil, no protection from the weather. They might as well have told us to build a city on the surface of a moon." Similar crises were unfolding across all human colonies simultaneously. On Proxima Centauri C, Colonel Amy Rodriguez received an ultimatum from the Nautiloid High Council. All human underwater settlements had to be abandoned within 6 months. The Nautiloids claimed that human farming techniques were contaminating the purity of ancestral waters and disrupting fish migration, patterns that had existed for millions of years. Dr. Kevin Hughes had tried desperately to prove that human innovations actually improved the ocean ecosystem. His research showed that the new kelp varieties supported more diverse marine life than traditional nautiloid farms. Fish populations in human-managed areas were healthier and more numerous than anywhere else on the planet. But the nautiloids refused to consider this evidence. Ambassador Coral Swimmer's final meeting with Amy Rodriguez was brief and cold. His skin showed dark patterns of finality as he delivered the eviction notice. "Your people's rapid changes disturb the ancient rhythms of our world. The Council has decided that coexistence is impossible." The situation on Tau Ceti was even worse. Captain Ben Turner faced the most hostile alien faction yet encountered. The Crystal Purists, a radical group within Quartzling society, had gained political control and declared human presence a harmonic disruption that threatened to shatter their crystal cities. Chief Resonator Harmony Song, who had once celebrated human innovations, now spoke in the musical tones that Quartzlings used for formal rejection. "The rapid vibrations of human activity create discord in our crystalline structures," she announced during the final council session. "Your people must depart within 1 rotation of our world, or face forcible removal." Maria Santos had tried to explain that human mining techniques actually strengthened the crystal formations, but the crystal purists claimed this was impossible. They insisted that only slow, traditional methods could maintain the sacred resonance of their underground cities. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Mitchell, who had replaced Ben Turner as colony commander, faced the impossible task of evacuating 15,000 colonists in less than 3 months. The Quartzlings had made it clear that any humans remaining after the deadline would be considered criminals and dealt with accordingly. Dr. Helen Brooks coordinated the emergency response from Earth, working around the clock to arrange evacuation ships for all 3 colonies. The logistics were overwhelming. Transport vessels that had taken years to prepare for the original colonization missions now had to be assembled in months to rescue the stranded settlers. But the crisis extended far beyond these 3 worlds. Reports flooded in from 17 different human colonies across the galaxy. The pattern was identical everywhere. Initial cooperation followed by growing fear and ultimate rejection. On Gliese 667cc, the plant-like Florarians decided that human botanical knowledge would destroy their traditional agricultural guilds. They declared human farming methods artificially aggressive and demanded immediate cessation of all human crop research. The Florarian Council voted to expel all humans within 4 seasons, claiming their presence threatened the planet's natural growing harmony. The vaporous beings of Wolf 1061c proved even more extreme in their rejection. These cloud-like entities existed as living gas formations and found human solid matter presence to be fundamentally offensive. They declared human colonies to be density pollution and began using weather control to create permanent storms around human settlements. Commander Nicole Davis aboard the exploration vessel Star Runner received distress calls from human colonies across the galaxy. Every world was implementing some form of expulsion or restriction. The creative justifications varied, but the underlying message was always the same. Humans were too successful, too adaptable, too innovative for alien comfort. The worst betrayal came from worlds that had specifically requested human help. The machine beings of Kepler 180F had invited human engineers to solve critical infrastructure problems that had plagued their civilization for centuries. Within months, human teams had revolutionized their power systems and transportation networks. But instead of gratitude, the machines expressed computational anxiety about human problem-solving speed and demanded immediate evacuation. Captain Pete Johnson led a delegation of human representatives to address the Galactic Council directly. The hearing took place on the neutral station Harmony Point, a massive space structure where all galactic species could meet safely. Pete hoped that direct communication with the galactic leadership might resolve the growing crisis. The council chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of alien civilizations. Pete stood at the center podium, surrounded by beings of every conceivable shape and form. He began his speech with careful diplomacy, explaining humanity's peaceful intentions and desire for mutual cooperation. "We came to your worlds as friends and partners," Pete said. His words translated simultaneously into dozens of alien languages. "We shared our knowledge freely and learned eagerly from your wisdom. We have never sought to replace or dominate any civilization. We only wanted to contribute to the prosperity of all species." But the responses from the alien delegates revealed the true depth of galactic fear toward humanity. One after another, representatives testified about the human threat to established civilizations. The Zephyrian delegate spoke about uncontrolled innovation, disrupting planetary stability. The Nautiloid representative described aggressive adaptation that threatened ancient marine traditions. The Quartzling speaker warned about harmonic contamination, destroying crystal civilization. Each alien species presented elaborate scientific and cultural justifications for their fear, but Pete recognized the real issue. Humanity had committed the ultimate crime in galactic society. They had proven that established ways of doing things could be improved dramatically. The final verdict came from Elder Wisdom Keeper, the ancient leader of the Galactic Council. Her species was so old that no one remembered their original name. She had guided galactic civilization for thousands of years, maintaining stability through careful balance between competing interests. The Council has reviewed all testimony regarding the human species, Elder Wisdom Keeper announced in a voice that carried the weight of ages. While humans have shown no direct aggressive intentions, their rapid development and innovative capabilities represent a destabilizing force in galactic civilization. Pete listened with growing horror as the Elder continued. "For the safety and stability of all member species, the Galactic Council hereby classifies humanity as a Category Alpha civilization risk. All human colonies outside the Sol system must be evacuated immediately. Humanity will be restricted to their home system under permanent quarantine." The decision was unanimous among the alien delegates. Not a single species spoke in humanity's defense. The beings that had once welcomed human colonists and celebrated human innovations now voted to exile them completely from galactic society. The quarantine terms were harsh and absolute. No human ship would be permitted to leave the Sol system. Any vessel attempting to breach the quarantine would be destroyed without warning. Trade with humanity was completely prohibited. Even communication with human colonies during evacuation was limited to essential coordination messages. Pete Johnson stood alone at the podium as alien delegates filed out of the chamber. The dream of humanity joining galactic civilization had become a nightmare of rejection and isolation. Every world that had once opened its arms to human settlers now slammed its doors shut in fear. Commander Nicole Davis received the evacuation orders while coordinating rescue operations across 17 different star systems. Her task had become impossible. Evacuate hundreds of thousands of human colonists from hostile alien worlds while facing active interference from local governments. Some alien civilizations actively sabotaged human evacuation efforts. Dr. Sandra Williams never expected to make the discovery that would change everything. She had been working as an archaeologist on Kepler 438b, a small research outpost that most people had forgotten about during the chaos of the Great Evacuation, while other human colonies faced expulsion and hatred. Her small team of 12 scientists had been quietly studying ancient ruins in the planet's polar region. The evacuation order for Kepler 438b came 3 days before Sandra made her breakthrough. The local alien government, a group of gas-based beings called the Ethereals, had joined the galactic consensus that humans were too dangerous to remain outside the Sol system. They gave Sandra's team exactly 1 week to pack their research and leave forever. Sandra stood in the main excavation site, looking at the massive stone structures that her team had been uncovering for 2 years. The ruins were clearly artificial, built by some intelligent species, but they were far older than any known galactic civilization. Carbon dating showed they were at least 2 million years old, making them older than most alien species had even existed. Commander Tony Garcia had arrived with the evacuation ship, but he was fascinated by Sandra's work. He was supposed to load the research team and leave immediately, but the ancient ruins captured his attention. "These structures look incredibly advanced," he told Sandra as they walked through the excavation site. "Whoever built them had technology that makes current galactic standards look primitive." The ruins covered an area larger than most cities, with buildings that reached deep underground and high into the sky. The construction materials were unlike anything in known galactic databases. They seemed to be made from a metal that never rusted or wore down, despite being exposed to weather for millions of years. But the most puzzling aspect was the architectural style. The doorways, stairs, and room proportions all seemed designed for beings about the same size and shape as humans. Every other alien species required different accommodations: taller ceilings for the Zephyrians, water-filled spaces for nautiloids, or specialized atmospheric conditions for gas-based beings. Sandra's team had been working to decode symbols carved into the ruins' walls. The writing system was completely unknown, unlike any galactic language. But Dr. Patricia Murphy, the team's linguistics specialist, had made surprising progress in understanding the basic structure of the ancient text. "The symbol patterns remind me of early human writing systems," Patricia explained to Tony as they examined a large wall covered with carved text. "Not the specific symbols, but the way they're arranged and connected. It's almost like this language developed along similar lines to human languages." As the evacuation deadline approached, Sandra made a desperate decision. She convinced Tony to give her team 24 more hours to explore a newly discovered chamber, deep beneath the main ruins. The chamber had been sealed behind a massive stone door that had taken weeks to open safely. When they finally entered the hidden chamber, they found something extraordinary. The walls were covered with detailed star maps showing the locations of every inhabited world in the galaxy. But these maps were millions of years old, created long before any current alien civilization had developed space travel. In the center of the chamber stood a device that looked like a combination of computer and hologram projector. When Sandra's team managed to activate it using power cells from their equipment, the device began displaying images and information that left them stunned. The holographic displays showed the history of galactic civilization in detail that no current species possessed. They revealed that every spacefaring alien race in the galaxy had been guided in their development by an ancient species called the progenitors. These beings had seeded worlds with early life forms, directed evolution along specific paths, and provided the basic technologies that all modern civilizations still used. Dr. Marcus Webb, the team's xenobiologist, studied the genetic information displayed by the ancient device. According to this data, every known alien species was created through guided evolution, he told the amazed research team. The progenitors took primitive life forms and modified them to develop intelligence along predetermined lines. But the most shocking revelation came when Sandra activated a section of the device labeled with symbols that translated roughly as origin, world. The holographic display showed detailed information about the progenitor's home planet, including genetic maps of the original species. The images were unmistakable. The progenitors had looked exactly like humans. Sandra stared at the holographic representation of a progenitor family. They had the same body structure, the same facial features, even the same range of skin colors as modern humans. The genetic maps confirmed what the images suggested. Humans and progenitors were essentially the same species. "This explains everything," Sandra whispered as the full implications hit her. "We're not just another species that developed naturally. We're the direct descendants of the galaxy's original civilization." Commander Tony Garcia immediately contacted Dr. Helen Brooks on Earth with their discovery. The communication took several hours to reach home due to the distance, but when Helen received the news, she understood its importance instantly. She called an emergency session of Earth's Leadership Council and shared Sandra's findings. The discovery answered so many questions about human capabilities that had puzzled scientists for years. Humans adapted to new environments faster than any known species, because they carried the genetic heritage of beings who had traveled to every world in the galaxy. Human innovation and problem-solving abilities were so advanced because they inherited the intellectual capacity of the civilization that had created galactic society itself. But the revelation also explained why alien civilizations feared humanity so intensely. Subconsciously, every alien species recognized something familiar about humans. They had been programmed by their progenitor creators to follow specific patterns of development and behavior. Humans represented the return of their makers, beings who were not limited by the same evolutionary programming. Captain Lisa Moore, who had been coordinating evacuation efforts across multiple star systems, received orders to broadcast Sandra's discovery to every human colony and evacuation ship. The news spread through the human diaspora like wildfire, giving people hope and pride during their darkest hour of rejection. The alien civilization's reaction to the discovery was immediate and terrified. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss what they called the progenitor crisis. Elder Wisdom Keeper, who had led the council for thousands of years, suddenly faced the possibility that her entire civilization was built on the legacy of beings who had returned. The revelation explained why the Galactic Council had been so quick to classify humanity as a Category Alpha threat. Every alien leader had instinctively recognized something dangerous about humans, something that threatened the established order of galactic civilization. Now they knew exactly what that threat was. Humans were the inheritors of the galaxy's greatest civilization, returned to reclaim their birthright. But instead of welcoming this knowledge, the alien civilizations became even more determined to contain humanity. The Galactic Council passed additional restrictions, classifying any research into progenitor history as forbidden knowledge. They declared Sandra's discovery to be destabilizing information that could not be shared with the general galactic population. Dr. Sandra Williams found herself at the center of the galaxy's greatest controversy. Alien governments demanded that she turn over all progenitor artifacts and data to galactic authorities. When she refused, citing humanity's right to their own ancestral heritage, the ethereals of Kepler 438b threatened to arrest her entire team. Tony Garcia made the decision to evacuate Sandra's team immediately, but not before they had copied every piece of information from the ancient chamber. The progenitor device was too large to move, but they documented everything it contained and took samples of the advanced materials used in its construction. As their ship departed Kepler 438b for the last time, Sandra looked back at the ancient ruins that had revealed humanity's true origin. The ethereals were already sealing the excavation site, determined to hide the evidence that humans were the galaxy's rightful inheritors. The journey back to Earth took months, but Sandra spent every day studying the copied progenitor data. The information revealed technologies far beyond anything currently available to galactic civilization. The progenitors had possessed faster-than-light travel methods that made current systems look like stone tools. Their energy production techniques could power entire star systems. Their medical knowledge could extend lifespans to thousands of years. Most importantly, the data included detailed instructions for terraforming and planetary engineering that could transform any world into a paradise. The progenitors had been master builders who could reshape entire solar systems to support life and civilization. When Sandra's ship finally reached Earth, she carried with her the knowledge that would transform humanity from exiled refugees into the galaxy's true leaders. The aliens who had rejected humans out of fear would soon discover that their worst nightmares were about to come true. The Galactic Council's response to the progenitor discovery was swift and absolute. Within days of Sandra Williams's return to Earth, massive alien fleets surrounded the Sol system. Elder Wisdom Keeper announced that humanity now represented a Category Alpha existential threat to galactic civilization. Any ship attempting to leave Earth's solar system would be destroyed immediately, and any communication with the outside galaxy was strictly forbidden. Admiral Chris Thompson stood in the command center of Earth's newly constructed orbital defense station, watching the alien blockade through massive viewing screens. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different species formed a complete barrier around the outer solar system. The message was clear. Humanity was now completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. But Chris Thompson was not the same military officer who had watched helplessly as human colonies were expelled from alien worlds. The progenitor knowledge brought back by Dr. Sandra Williams had changed everything. Human scientists had spent 18 months studying the ancient data, and the results were beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Dr. Rachel Morgan led the team that had been working to understand progenitor technology. Her laboratory complex on the moon was filled with prototype devices based on ancient designs. The progenitors were not just advanced, she explained to Admiral Thompson during his inspection visit. They were thousands of years ahead of current galactic technology in every field we can imagine. The first breakthrough had come in energy production. Progenitor power systems could generate nearly unlimited clean energy from basic matter conversion. Within months of studying the ancient blueprints, human engineers had built fusion reactors that made the most advanced alien power sources look like campfires. But the real revolution was in terraforming technology. The progenitors had possessed the ability to completely reshape worlds in decades rather than centuries. They could adjust atmospheric composition, create stable weather patterns, and even modify a planet's gravity and magnetic fields. Captain Dan Richardson commanded the first starship built using progenitor technology. The vessel, named New Beginning, was unlike anything in the current galactic fleet. It could travel faster than light using methods that alien scientists claimed were impossible. Its hull was made from self-repairing materials that became stronger under stress. Most importantly, it carried terraforming equipment that could transform barren worlds into garden paradises. The transformation of the Sol system began with Mars. Using progenitor atmospheric processors, human engineers began converting the red planet's thin carbon dioxide atmosphere into a breathable mixture of oxygen and nitrogen. Massive machines melted the polar ice caps to create oceans and rivers. Within 3 years, Mars had clouds, rain, and the first green plants growing in Martian soil. Venus proved even more dramatic. The planet's crushing atmospheric pressure and sulfuric acid clouds had made it completely uninhabitable. But progenitor technology allowed humans to strip away the toxic atmosphere and replace it with one suitable for human life. Giant cooling systems brought the surface temperature down to comfortable levels. Within 5 years, Venus had become a tropical paradise with vast oceans and continent-sized land masses covered in forests. The moons of Jupiter and Saturn were transformed into industrial and research centers. Europa's subsurface ocean was opened to the surface and made habitable. Titan's methane atmosphere was converted into breathable air, while preserving its unique landscape features. Even small asteroids were reshaped into space habitats that could house millions of people. Dr. Rachel Morgan made her most important discovery during the 4th year of isolation. Deep within the progenitor data, she found detailed genetic templates that could enhance human capabilities dramatically. The modifications were not artificial changes, but rather the activation of dormant genes that all humans carried from their progenitor ancestors. The genetic activation process was voluntary and safe. It extended human lifespans to several centuries while improving physical strength, mental capacity, and resistance to disease. Most importantly, it enhanced the natural human abilities that had already made them superior to other galactic species. Captain Dan Richardson was among the first to undergo the genetic activation process. He emerged from the treatment facility feeling more alert and capable than ever before. "It's like I was only using a fraction of my brain before," he told Dr. Rachel Morgan. "Now I can see connections and possibilities that were invisible to me." The enhanced humans began developing technologies that surpassed even the ancient progenitor achievements. They created starships that could cross the galaxy in days rather than years. They designed weapons that could disable entire fleets without causing permanent harm. They built construction systems that could assemble entire cities in weeks. But most importantly, they developed a philosophy of inclusion and cooperation that was completely different from the fear-based approach of the current Galactic Council. Admiral Chris Thompson established the principles that would guide humanity's return to galactic civilization. "We will welcome all beings who come in peace, regardless of their past actions or current capabilities." 50 years passed within the Sol system quarantine. The alien blockade remained in place, with new ships replacing old ones as their crews rotated back to homeworlds. The aliens watched human activities through long-range sensors, becoming increasingly amazed and terrified by what they observed. The Sol system had become the most advanced and prosperous region in known space. Every planet and major moon supported thriving human populations. The asteroid belt had been converted into a vast manufacturing complex that produced goods of unimaginable quality. Space elevators connected planetary surfaces to orbital cities that housed billions of people in comfort and luxury. But the aliens beyond the quarantine barrier faced a very different reality. Without human innovation to drive progress, galactic civilization had begun to stagnate. The technology that all species depended upon was based on ancient progenitor designs that they had never fully understood. As equipment aged and failed, many civilizations found themselves unable to maintain their previous standards of living. The Zephyrians of Kepler 442b were among the first to experience serious decline. Their crystal-based technology required precise maintenance that they had forgotten how to perform. Power systems failed across their cities, leaving millions without electricity or heat. Their leaders begged the Galactic Council for assistance, but no other species possessed the knowledge to help them. Similar problems spread throughout alien space. The nautiloids watched their underwater cities crumble as water filtration systems broke down. The quartzlings found their musical crystal networks falling silent as harmonic resonators failed one by one. Every species that had rejected human help now desperately needed the innovation they had feared and forbidden. The first refugee ships appeared at the edge of the Sol system during the Yain Quarantine's 50th year. These were not invasion fleets or diplomatic missions, but desperate civilian vessels carrying families who could no longer survive in their failing civilizations. President Karen Lewis, Earth's leader, had been waiting for this moment. She had spent decades preparing for the day when the galaxy would come seeking the help they had once rejected. Her response to the refugee ships was broadcast across human space and transmitted beyond the quarantine barrier. To all beings seeking refuge and assistance, Karen Lewis announced, Earth extends its welcome. We do not ask about your past actions or your previous government's decisions. We only ask that you come in peace and contribute to our shared future. The alien blockade commanders faced an impossible decision. Their orders were to prevent any contact between humans and the outside galaxy. But the refugee ships carried civilians whose only crime was seeking survival as their homeworlds collapsed. Admiral Thompson made the decision that changed everything. He ordered the human fleet to escort the refugee ships safely through the quarantine barrier. When alien warships moved to intercept them, human vessels demonstrated their overwhelming technological superiority by disabling the blockade ships without causing any casualties. The first alien refugees to reach Earth were amazed by what they found. The planet had become a garden world where beings of any species could live comfortably. Cities floated in the clouds, grew beneath the oceans, and stretched across continents in harmony with preserved natural environments. But more importantly, the refugees discovered that humans bore no grudges against the species that had expelled them. Instead of revenge or discrimination, they found welcome and opportunity. Alien children attended schools alongside human students. Mixed species research teams worked on projects that benefited everyone. Former enemies became neighbors and friends. Word of Earth's welcome spread throughout the galaxy despite the Galactic Council's attempts to suppress the information. More refugee fleets arrived each month as failing. Civilization sent their people to the only place that offered hope for the future. The Galactic Council made one final attempt to contain humanity by sending a massive military fleet to destroy the Sol system entirely, but the attack never reached its target.